Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ball Watching. For those of us tuning in on the YouTubes or on the videos right now, you can say, wait, did Justin get a huge facelift over the last week or so? No, he did not. We are joined today by our player analyst, newly announced for this year, AJ Cochran. AJ, welcome to Ball Watching. It's a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you. Pumped to be here. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some football.
Oh, man. And we will do plenty of that. For those of you that may not know, first of all, how? Second of all, AJ, I mean, we can kind of give your elevator pitch of experience, but we have you in the show here and as someone we can call on throughout the season because you bring a wealth of playing experience. You know, you grew up, played here in St. Louis, and I'll let you kind of give a little bit of that story, but logged a ton of professional minutes and experiences across MLS, USL Championship as well. So you kind of know how that pathway works, and I cannot wait to pick your brain as we go throughout this season. But AJ, want to give us like kind of the elevator pitch about your experience kind of growing up playing ball here in St. Louis for anyone that might not know you?
Yeah, grew up like first 2 years playing for Bush back in the day, which then turned into St. Louis Soccer Club, and then joined Scott Gallagher when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and I was with Scott Gallagher for my entire youth, and got to play in the academy there, and went to CBC, and was fortunate enough to be able to do both. So got to play at CBC, and from there went to the University of Wisconsin, played there for 3 seasons. Then left as Generation Adidas my junior year and entered the draft, and was drafted down to Houston in the first round and played in Houston for 2 years. And then from there, kind of went all over the place in the USL Championship. And like you said, played in St. Louis. And then I went to Atlanta for a year, which was an amazing experience, and kind of really brought me back to the game, you know, that I loved, and went to Phoenix from there. And probably my 2 favorite years of professional soccer were there. And then went to Indianapolis for 2 years. I was all over the place, and then finished my career in Charleston, which was a beautiful place to end. And we really had an amazing final, I had an amazing final year there, and they had an amazing year that year that kind of took them off the next year and had another great one. So yeah, that's kind of my background of the playing experience.
Awesome.
Playing 10 years. Yeah, 10 years pro. So
Damn, it's crazy, man. And we've been obviously following you, and AJ, obviously someone checking in here in the comments saying one of my favorite rising players. Hello from Phoenix. Emily, hello.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. Yeah, we had an awesome run in Phoenix. Phoenix was super special place in my heart there. So
I want to talk about Phoenix and USL actually a little bit as we get into the show here, because obviously some big news today. If you haven't seen, AJ, I'll break it down for you. We can kind of get your live reaction. But before we go too far into the show, there was one thing I wanted to start off with, AJ, and I was like, when we first, I guess, met in person, we were doing the Soccer Dad pod.
yeah.
And I was like, I had known your name. Obviously, I'd, kind of followed you, and you and I think overlapped in high school by maybe a year or 2.
Yeah, I think
and
maybe 2. Yeah.
AJ, I was doing some digging. I'm like, I swear one of my first ever games playing, I was a goalie at DeSmet, was against CBC. And so I dug back, like way back in Facebook. And I don't think this picture is you, but AJ, I'm going to just say it just for the fun of it. Like, I'm almost positive that you headed this ball, and this is me in the green tipping this over the crossbar. So I'm doing a little bit of a soft flex here, but I think off.
Yeah, I like that it's blurry, because I'm going to claim it is me, whether it is or not, so I'm claiming that.
So this was, dude, the famed CBC tournament. I will give CBC a shout out. Obviously, that was always so much fun to do. Kind of like a MCC kind of conference battle right off the beginning bat of the season, and then do it again when it really mattered.
Was Vitello still there at the time?
Yes.
Shirts tucked in, all black.
Absolutely.
Shoes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was BMO, or else you weren't playing, right?
No, you had to get them spray painted, man. I mean, you back at that time,
old school.
I mean, dude, we're dating ourselves at this point, but like, I had to, at that time, really, what was really cool was Nike ID. You could get those shoes like customized exactly the color that you needed. So like, I blacked out my cleats one time for a season, and that was nice. Otherwise, I mean, dude, you had to take them out back, get some black spray paint, and just hang those things up and just go to town. And then if they showed cracks, if you showed too many cracks, the color was starting to come back through, you got to redo it. You got to go right back over them. It was Different times. Different
Different
times.
times. I don't think that would fly nowadays, but that's different times. Because Tommy Howe was the same way. Tommy Howe loved the all black look. That's
Yeah.
that old school mentality,
It
man.
is. You can
So,
respect it, I think, to a certain extent. And obviously, you
sure.
were on the other sideline with another legend of a coach. We had a question here from Coach Smitty on X saying, when you get the questions, curious what it was like, obviously for you, AJ, playing underneath the legendary Terry Mickler.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a St. Louis legend and national legend in high school soccer and soccer in general. And I've talked about it before. It was truly a blessing getting to play with Tom Howe and then Terry Mickler, because they both have very different ideas of how the game that should be played. And Tom Howe is very possession based, training, play the beautiful game, and Terry Mickler was 2 passes and a goal. Like very aggressive, hit the channels. If we're going to win the game 5-4, we're going to win the game 5-4. So I was very lucky to have both of them. Ton of knowledge, and for both of them. Terry Mickler, I mean, it's well over 1,000 wins now in high school soccer. And, he's back out on the field now after, going through
Yeah.
the health issues and back stronger. So, it was a blessing being able to play for Terry Mickler. There's so much history at CBC. So very blessed to be able, to have that a part of my, soccer timeline. So,
Certainly, man. No,
yeah.
I echo that sentiment. I mean, even after the move to, away from having all those players playing in high school and then some in the academy, and then, really a lot of the top crop in the academy and, what's left in high school, I do think we've really still, I feel like, maintained a pretty high competitive environment here in high school ball. And we had it before. We still have it now, man. You watch, they do the Champions League now, which is really cool to watch and see some of the different classes kind of compete against each other, which is always a, something that your friends from Priory or those other schools that are in different classes would always give you crap about. We were playing. So I love how we have such a big focus and just such high quality on high school ball. And obviously we both got to partake.
Dude, Jake, we were lucky. We were lucky.
Yeah.
I really do I feel bad for the guys that don't get to experience what, we got to experience playing the high school ball. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, MLS next, like amazing.
Yeah.
So, that's not what I'm saying, but
Right.
to be able to experience, playing in front of your friends on a Friday night at SLU and NC tournament and, taking that bus 2 hours early from high school to go to Oakville and, grinding out a win. Like those are special times. I'm really grateful for those.
I am too. It's something, and I promise we'll hop off this topic, but and we could probably spend a whole episode talking about that. But I mean, just the feeling of playing for your school with all your friends, and then it being the thing to do on that Friday night. Maybe everyone go out to the soccer park. I mean, you're packing a couple thousand people there to go watch that. So I mean, St. Louis always shows out for it. So it was always really fun. But AJ, let's crack into preseason. The 2 games that we have yet to talk about here on the show since we last recorded, myself and Justin, were the Austin game, which happened on the 8th, and then New York City FC, which happened yesterday, time of recording for us. So, AJ, I watched the game. I know you watched the games as well. You saw a lot of different players feature in both, which is, a normal thing to look at when you look at preseason. But the first thing that I kind of wanted to chat with you about, and you and I were texting a little bit about this before we even hopped on, was the evolution in formation. You kind of talked about the 2 coaches you played under, and Tommy Howe and Terry Mickler, and the differences in their style. I almost kind of saw some resemblance in what we've come from and where we're heading now with a little more possession and what we're seeing. But AJ, tell me about what you're kind of seeing on the field in terms of our setup and how we go to play.
Yeah, so I know we briefly talked about. I was a little confused with how the game started, what the formation was at Austin. I wasn't sure if it was a 3-5-2, if it was a 4-3-3. It looked very fluid. Okay, now with me just being brutally honest, I wasn't super happy with the Austin performance. Now, granted, it's preseason, but I thought we didn't look as aggressive. I would say a little unsure in our building out. I thought Austin had the better of the play for probably about 60 minutes. A lot of new faces, and we'll get into this, with the new coach and new system. I mean, it's going to take time. But the good thing is at the end of the first half, 0-0, they had some really good opportunities. I thought they were really strong on their left side, our right side. You could tell there was a little bit of, whether it was unfamiliar territory, maybe playing those positions or with those players. I got some notes here. It took about 12 minutes for us to hit our first direct ball. So when Austin was, kind of in that high press, right? Building out of a high press at times, especially at the beginning of games, can be very tough. So it took 12 minutes for us to kind of get that first direct ball in behind to kind of let us breathe a little bit, battle for that second, and then establish possession in our third or their final third. So that was one thing, it just didn't look too confident going
Yeah.
forward. And then to jump super quick, and I know we're going to get there, but I thought the NYC first half was way different. Super impressed there. I really like the confidence and the creativity we were showing on the ball going forward there. So it was good to see that from one game to the next. What did you think about the Austin game?
Yeah, it's funny you said that about the first half because like I didn't really have much to even write down in my notes about the
Yeah.
first half, and that says something. I think it says two things at least to me. One, Austin did look really good. They looked like they were mid-season at that times. Like they just
Yeah.
looked cohesive, and they'd all kind of bought in. It just kind of felt like that watching Austin and just the glue and how they moved the ball. It just looked really confident.
Yeah.
And you don't really see that in preseason.
No.
So
Yeah.
hats off to them.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've done a lot over the off season. Obviously, a lot of new personnel as well. So I will say that Austin's a team I'm looking for as we look to play them twice here in the Western Conference coming up. But I agree. I think the possession that we did have, it's more than we're used to. But even in the first half, it didn't translate. It wasn't meaningful possession or advancing the ball in a meaningful way or looking for that incisive pass, or at least playing the incisive pass. So I agree with you. I think for me, it was when the subs and some of the rotations for guys that didn't sub off,
Yep.
they're playing guys, AJ. I'm looking at this team, like so many different positions, like all in preseason. Like Hebert, for example, I think he
Right
started
back,
the game.
right back to left back.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he was, if you're saying you start with a 3-5-2, he was the right wing back to start the game. And then he shifts over to left center back, which is like, who does that? But
Wild.
what did you think about him specifically? Because I worry about him at right wing back because he, to me, doesn't feel like that profile. I know he's pretty safe on the ball, but pretty safe on the ball is not necessarily, I think, what you want from a wing back, right? You want someone that's running the channels, that can stretch, that can contribute from an attacking perspective too. And I thought when he switched to left center back, he played a lot better and he contributed, I think, to our goal as well.
Yeah, I think if I was going to play Hebert in any formation, in any system, it'd be a back three, either not the central, but either the right sided or the left sided of a back three. Very athletic, fit, pretty solid on the ball, got a decent range of passing. There's a lot of attributes there for that specific spot where taking the ball. I thought Josh Yarrow did a pretty good job of it in the first half versus NYC. And even when he came on against Austin, taking that space, I think Hebert can do that. To your point, in a 3-5-2, I don't think his strongest position would be, that right winger.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. Like, by the way, that's a hard position to play.
Oh, man.
And even I had the same gripes last season when we played him just at left back. I just prefer him centrally. And I think when you look at our center back core, right? I mean, you have Nilsson, you've Kessler, you've got Giannis Horn now, you've got Yarrow, you've got Hebert. I think of any of, that group of people, Yarrow and Hebert to me are the athletic folk in that group. And not that everything's about athleticism, but when you've got guys like Nilsson who are great defenders, in the air, they're amazing. They can make those interceptions. They've got great vision or kind of awareness of where that ball's going to go, and they can really make it hard for strikers to receive. But for guys like Yarrow and Hebert, I feel like their money is made on when things go wrong. You need someone with recovery speed, with athleticism that can catch up to that man and just make it difficult. And I feel like those guys bring that. So that's something I want to give him credit for. Another couple of people that I wanted to chat about with you briefly, AJ, on this first game where I thought two people came on late in the game and to me made a big difference.
Can I guess who?
I got two. Two.
Pompeu.
Yep.
Okay. And Vasilev. When those two came on, the game changed for us. And I got that in my notes. I was like, because I wasn't in, the first half, we lacked that creativity. And when those two came on, the thing about Austin that I was impressed with is they had 3 or 4 guys that were comfortable in tight spaces and very technical. That Bukhari, I mean, he was causing us problems. I mean, that guy wanted the ball at his feet, and he wasn't scared to go at you 1v2, and create, cut in on that right foot. You saw that multiple times in the first half. So I agree with you. Pompeu and Vasilev came on very impressed with
Yeah.
how, I mean, they changed the game for us.
I mean,
Uh,
100%. And you don't have to be like an analytical mind to see that. Like, I just think anyone watching the game would have been like, holy crap. It looks like they were playing a different pace or a different game. I think Celio is just because he's such a different player. We don't have any other Celios on
mhm.
the team. So for him to come on, I think he was kind of playing that second striker role.
A little
And
bit, yeah, a little bit
when you're
tucked
doing
in.
that, I
Yeah.
feel like, and you can probably speak more to this too from just your experience and watching guys do this. He had so much freedom to run and just go find the ball and just go wreak havoc on defenders. His 1v1, ability on the ball is just unbelievable. And I felt like he was causing them a lot of defensive, questions at least to answer. Indy different. I think Indy is just coming off the high of this US men's national team, couple of appearances here, and he's playing with just oozing confidence.
Yeah.
He was playing, I think, like the left wing back, maybe from what I was picking up, but he was popping up everywhere. He was a big focal point in the attack.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, coming off the national team, I mean, any guy's going to come back into camp just ready to go, hungry, confident, and you're seeing that right now. I mean, he's a special player. I think he's going to be awesome for us. One thing that I noticed in the first half of that Austin game, with Nilsson, okay, left-sided center back, that was my position. I loved his entry passes, and to go what you were talking about with having with having Vasilev in there or Pompeu or whoever it is, a lot of the entry passes from Nilsson were finding Klaus in the first half. Okay. I really liked how, I mean, Klaus is very good in the buildup and finding times to come back and
Yep.
support the team and help with that. Okay. I'm holding the ball up. So I really liked Nilsson's distribution to kind of break that first line, that midfield line. What I didn't think there was a lot of is options underneath Klaus. So when that ball goes in and Klaus is coming in, you want to see a touch or a layoff, and then you want to see your wingers go. And Klaus kind of had to play that, 15-yard back ball
Yep.
to Lewin or to
Yep.
somebody instead
Yep.
of having a little bit more support under him. So I think that's one thing that, that we could look forward to just grow on a little bit is those entry passes, just having a little bit more of that creativity. And I think we saw that in the first half of the New York game. I think once we got into that middle third, attacking third, you started to see those combinations
Mhm.
better. And then, nice little balls on the outside of their wing backs for us to run onto. I like to see that growth from the Austin game to the NYC. It
Yep.
shows that things are starting to click a little bit and going in the right direction towards
No,
the
I
end.
would agree. And just I guess to bring us to that game, we didn't talk about the goal itself, but Thomas Totland scored that goal for us, I think off of service from Indy, brought it down. He
Mhm.
was probably 6-8 yards away, had a nice tidy finish, and that game ended in a draw. But I mean, nothing that
It
was
was
like
a sweet finish. I think it was outside the right
it
foot. It was a
was.
sweet finish. Yeah.
It was especially nice for your right wing back, and we know that he has it, in his locker because he's the one that salvaged that game against Sporting last year as well at the death. So we know that he has those finishing boots on. I
Yeah.
think a right wing back position for him is kind
Yep.
of the marriage of a lot of his strengths. So I'm really looking forward to a season at that position for him. Let's go to New York City.
Okay.
So another preseason game a couple of days later, different personnel, obviously.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw a little bit of a different formation. I wrote down 3-3-5-2. AJ, I'm curious to hear what you're going to say here because it to me kind of felt like we had more of a 3-2, almost like what is that? A 3-2-2-1? Does that add up? No. Oh, what I'm saying is that we had a back three. We had
Yeah.
Watson Leuven, I think, sitting in front of them. And then
Yeah.
you had Totland and Hebert as the wingbacks. And then I
Yeah.
think Hartel and Indy just kind of ahead of Watson Leuven. And then Klaus right ahead of them. And I didn't see it as a second striker type thing, like a double
Mhm.
striker, but I thought it was working. I think Hartel, given that ability with a guy sitting next to him like Indy, who's going to work his tail off all game and put in the hard yards, and Hartel does too. But giving him again freedom to go find the ball, to go
Yeah.
look for that play to connect play for us, I think you saw that pay off because we looked dangerous. I mean,
We did.
arguably for the entire game, but when Hartel was on there, he was driving a lot for us.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I mean, I was impressed with the first half. Everything you said, the Austin game, I almost the whole game I was watching it thinking it was a 4-3-3, and then New York, I definitely saw that more of that back three, and then kind of that fluid rotation, because sometimes I'm watching it and Watts is playing, as a right winger.
Yeah.
So it was very fluid. And that's what I texted you. I was like, these formations, like what, and as I'm texting you, the announcer's like, he talked about press conference that Olaf was saying. He's like, we want to be organized within ourselves, but we want like the opponents guessing,
Yeah.
basically like we want to know our formation, but
It's working.
we don't want you to have any idea what we're doing. And I'm like, man, you just like took the words right out of my mouth. I had no idea what was going on. So yeah, I like that. I got notes on here that we just look more confident and creative. I like Klaus's play in the New York City game better than I did the Austin game. I thought he was finding good spots, and I thought he was making more aggressive runs in the box. We were literally off on, I would say 4 or 5 crosses, little slip balls, stuff that you're going to expect in preseason not to quite come off. But Klaus was in good positions. People are going to kind of be on him a little bit about that back post. He just didn't get it all, almost bounced a little short in front of him. He was expecting it almost to come a little bit more to him in the air, took that little bounce, and
I know what you're talking about.
It ended up having to be like a little half volley. Now, listen, like, okay, do you want to see him, rip that, and score a goal? Of course. But I think it's more important for this stage of preseason that he's making those good hard runs. He's showing that initiative to get in good spots after he's holding the ball up, laying it off. And then you got to get, you got to make a 20, 30-yard hard run to put yourself in a good position to score. And he was doing that. Now it's just that final product. Right now, it's just seeing that ball hit the back of the net. So I'd rather him, be doing that in a month now, 2 months
For
now,
sure.
than banging two goals a game in this preseason.
Absolutely. I think it's a sign of early success if you're at least finding the right positions. It's another thing to translate, get that ball in the back of the net, and that's what kind of snake bit him a lot of the last season. But hopefully we'll find those shooting boots.
Because that's how it was last season, right? I mean, he found great areas inside the box.
Yep.
Just that final product wasn't there. So hopefully this year.
One can hope. The other thing I noticed, AJ, and this to me has never been a feature much of the system that I've seen us play. And I think part of it's because we've been such a narrow team for at least the first 2 seasons I can remember. We haven't really had any true wingers. Like you've got Alm, who, can get some chalk on his boots. I think, Salio can do the same, but he really was featuring last year a lot until he got hurt. And then he missed, the second half of the season. I'm seeing a lot of big switches, a lot of let's draw the defense over to one side of the field and hit the big one and hit either your right wing back, your left wing back who's running that channel and just totally, displace or kind of imbalance the defense and make them transition over there. And I've seen I saw at least a handful of instances in the first half yesterday of us doing that. Hebert particularly, I think, had one incredible switch, and I think it generated one of our goals.
Yeah, just kind of to have that range of passing in your arsenal, right? I mean, that every coach is going to tell you that we want to suck the team into one side, and then we want a quick switch of play and expose the team right before they could recover. So to have that, in your pocket and to be able to hit those long balls is definitely a weapon, right? So I think you're 100% right. And the one key thing about that is like risk versus reward, right? How far are you going to have your right wing back over there? You're going to have them on the touchline, because a quick turnover right there, quick turnover, they get the ball, you're going to be exposed. So if you're organized, if you're playing in that back three and your right-sided center back is organized and communicating with that 6 and that 8 to kind of just be in a good position just in case the ball gets lost, you're fine. You can play that expansive, So that really comes down to, if you're going to play that style, very expansive, look for those long switch of plays. You just got to make sure that your center backs and your 6 are always on the same page in terms of, being ready for a turnover.
So. Totally agree. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Only other things I want to note here for at least as I kind of transition to second half is, first half obviously goes well. We made almost full sale changes, and a lot of good things happened in the first half. As well. We didn't talk about, like Indy. I still feel like was one of our top performers. I felt like he was dangerous, finding the ball in dangerous areas, driving a lot of our attack, dictating. And then the second half comes on and you got a lot of changes, obviously. One of the ones that really stuck out to me, AJ, and this guy, we're all just learning his name now because he's trialing with us right now, is Alfredo Morales. I'm not sure if you noticed him out there, but Alfredo Morales is a former U.S. men's national team player. He played in the Bundesliga. He, I think, is an MLS Cup champion as well. And he is on trial with us right now. I believe he's in his low 30s. So he's without a club. And he stepped in the kind of 6, maybe 8 position until we get a full-fledged like idea of exactly what our formation is in a real game that matters. I'm not going to put any numbers to it, but he was kind of the deep lying playmaker when Leuven came out, and he had at least 1 assist, maybe 2. The weight of his passing and his ball playing, I thought was really impressive. Central midfield for me, AJ, and this is maybe where I can toss it to you, is a position of need for us in terms of numbers because, we have Leuven. Everyone kind of knows what Leuven is. It sounds like Watts is going to play there a lot this year.
Yeah.
Watts has kind of been between right back and central defensive midfield in his time with us. Never has really fully impressed me in big games in the midfield, though. So I'm a lot to see there. Durkin, who is yet to feature in preseason so far. So we'll see what his injury is looking like. And, after that, it gets pretty thin in terms of like 10 looking midfielders. So if we're going to fill in another roster spot, a guy that's a veteran, maybe okay with a year deal and just seeing how it goes and highly incentivized type contract, I could see working because I do think that's a position of need for us.
No, I think you're spot on there. Like you said, Leuven, like so creative, great range of passing. Having someone else in there that if you want to kind of switch it up a little bit, maybe play him a little higher or just to complement him really well is something that I think we're going to need. I've always said, my favorite and what I think is the most important position on the field is a 6. At 6 in that 8 role, I mean, they're not only your engine, but they're not necessarily the heart of the team, but like the play is usually dictated through them. They really allow the team to flow and can slow the game down, can speed the game up. So I think you're spot on. Now, I didn't watch much of the second half, so I can't speak to Morales' play too much, but I think that's somewhere. I think the right-sided center back is a position that needs to be addressed or at least kind of figured out before the first game of the year. And then I think having some more depth in the midfield. I liked what I saw on the wings. I liked what I saw on our wing backs. Berkey's save in the first half against Austin. I mean, that like got looked over. That is a world-class save.
Yeah.
I mean, through bodies. That was a hell of a save.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it. We're so used to him at this point, dude. It's like,
dude, his distribution.
Yeah, like I didn't even write it down. I'm just like, this is just a normal Monday for him.
And I'll put my hand up when we first, signed Berkey as a DP, as a goalkeeper, and I was like, what are we doing? We're spending that money on a goalkeeper. It's like one of our first signings, or he was the first signing, right? And I'm like, this is, what are we doing? The guy's the best goalkeeper in the league. Yeah. I mean, he is just a stud. I mean, his ability to play out of the back, create plays out of nothing, his saves, like, he's the best goalkeeper in the league for me. So very lucky to have him on our team. What a stud. I was, like I said, I liked our wingers play in the second half of the first game and then the entire game in New York City. So I think that right-sided center back and then a little bit of that midfield, if we can kind of bulk that up a little bit, I think you're 100% right. I think we'll be sitting in a pretty good position.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think those are 2 positions that I'm going to be looking and keeping an eye out for. I think the good takeaway that I'm kind of feeling from you, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is from a depth perspective, I feel a lot more comfortable about where we're at right now heading into this 3rd season than I did last season. And even the season prior as well. I just feel like we have more quality options available. And we did a ton of upgrading last year. And you forced out of the 11 some guys that are pretty good, still that if they're coming off the bench or if we're in an injury crisis or if we're just rotating for rotation's sake, I just feel like this roster that we have is probably the deepest we've had in our existence, which probably makes sense.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, Jake, just real quick. Do you think we have a center midfielder that is a quote unquote ball winner?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That has that in his arm. That doesn't need to be his only trait, obviously.
Right.
Have someone that could complement a Leuven, because Leuven's a playmaker, in my opinion. Guy wants to be on the ball. He wants to be, I don't know if I want Leuven making 60 to 80 yard recovery runs, slide tackling. Of course, I'd love to see it, but someone to complement him in there in that eight role. If you want to jump Leuven up to that 8 role and have a 6 that's a little bit more of a hybrid of a playmaker and a ball winner, do we have that?
I think the club would say, and I would say that they envision that role as Durkin's,
Hmm.
but they have no one else besides him. That
Hmm.
is that type of profile, because I think what you're looking for is someone that can put in the hard yards. I mean, constantly tracking, constantly looking to intercept passes, jump at the passing lanes, stick in some serious, insanely
Yeah.
good tackles. And I think for the most part he does, but the reason we're here with him right now is because we ran him into the ground last season. He played every game, every 90, all the stop. I mean, he was the only option that we had in that position. So I guess I would say back is I think that's Durkin, but do you have someone that at least has a resemblance of some of those traits that can step in and do a job as well? And that I feel less confident about. I think that's what they hope Watts would be. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I don't think that's like, one of his strongest attributes.
Yep.
Watts, I think
Yep.
he's kind of a little bit more in the low end, in the Lewin range, where wants
Yep.
to be on the ball, wants to be creative, wants to go forward, which is all amazing traits to have, right?
Yep.
I just also want to see that little bit of bite, that like you saying
Yes.
that Chris Durkin has. So if Chris Durkin's injured, we need that in there when we're going to a Portland and it's rainy on a Saturday night and
Absolutely.
it's 45 degrees, right?
Yep.
Like you're gonna need that.
No,
When
absolutely. And I hope they know that. I mean, because obviously we have Blum, who was supposed to be that destroyer in midfield, overseas now on loan. I don't think he'll ever play for us again. So you have a position of need there. I think that's probably why they were anticipating when they got Durkin, maybe.
Mhm.
But Blum, it was nothing last season for us. He was always on the wrong end of off the field stuff with him and Hackett, with the most memorable one I could think of. And I just think he had a big drop off from season 1 to 2. So to add to your list of needs, I think maybe that is the central midfield, like someone that can flex between a 6 and an 8 that has qualities of both.
And you know what I think Olaf is probably thinking, okay? And this is one thing that I think it, gives a little bit of a perspective that just kind of popped into my mind. If we're playing a 3-5-2 or we're playing a three-back system, okay, and you have those three center backs pretty narrow, playing narrow at times, you might not technically need that quote unquote ball winner.
Yep.
If you're playing an expansive 4-4-2, 4-3-3, and you got your center backs very wide, and then you're
Yeah.
leaving a lot of room for being exposed on turnovers. But if you're a
Hmm.
little more here, you're hoping that turnovers are basically going to go wide and you can recover down
Right.
instead of two wide center backs with bad turnovers and bad areas. You'd want a very athletic six in there to be able to recover down.
Yep.
So, if they're going to play that 3-5-2 system or whatever that system is,
Right.
that basically a back three
Yeah.
in the build, I think you could probably sacrifice not having a
It's a
true
good
ball
call.
winner there.
That's a
So,
good call. One name I didn't
mm,
mention, and I want to get us on, but I forgot this because he's out of sight, out of mind right now, is our young Aussie, Jake Gerwood Reich. JGR is yet to feature in preseason. He played sparingly last season as well. I mean, we had just gotten him from Australia, and he's still super young. But he is a guy that they've scouted, I think, both as a center back and as a
mhm.
six. So he's got qualities of both. I think those are complementary roles. Maybe someone, if you're looking at a guy that can play both, is confident, in their positioning. A center back has very specific traits. They're strong, they're athletic, they've got good vision. But from a six perspective, I think he's got a little bit more of that passing ability, a little bit more of the anticipatory, stepping into challenges and winning balls. We just haven't seen enough of a sample size to really know exactly yet. But I think maybe that's another guy that you could see slotting in that role as well.
Okay, I'm probably only going to gain more confidence as the season goes on.
Yep.
You start picking up injuries, and he can start to find those
Yep.
minutes. And all it takes is one good opportunity. And I've kind of preached about that before, so I won't bore you. But one good opportunity could literally give a player a ton of confidence to really turn into something special. So you
Totally
just
agree.
got to make sure if you're on that fringe, if you're battling for that 18 every day or
Yeah.
fighting for minutes, that it just takes one injury, one opportunity, and next thing you know, you could be starting the next 10 games. So
Yeah. I mean, look at last season. We had, 20 different pairings of center backs. So it's going to come for everyone at some point. It's just
new
got to be ready
coach,
when your number's called, man. That's what it
absolutely,
is. But
absolutely.
AJ, I was curious too. So stepping out of like the nitty gritty of our preseason, having you don't get to talk to players that have been in that kind of system every day. So I wanted to kind of ask you, on behalf of the listeners and just fans of the team, preseason to me kind of feels a little bit mysterious, kind of like a black box sometimes, because all you get to see is maybe if they stream the game, we can watch it, and then again, you still don't really know what's going on
Yeah.
sometimes. What's it like to be in preseason? Obviously, you've done 10 of them, at different levels in the soccer pyramid. What is the focus? In I feel like it's a balance. This is just me, projecting, but between fitness, health, learning what that coach wants to do. How do you balance all of that as a player in preseason?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, man, from a player perspective, it was you were always looking forward to preseason ending. You always wanted the season to start. That's just the bottom line. Now, going on trips in preseason helped it out. Now, I didn't have a family at the time, but so like I don't know what it's like for
Right.
guys that have to leave their families for 2 weeks at a time to go play in Coachella or down. And we used to go to down in Tucson, Arizona. Okay, and I loved it. Like that part of preseason was a blast. You're getting with your guys, you got your roommate dinners together, you
Yeah.
got to go out and grab dinners and it was a lot of fun. You got to hang out by the pool. So that aspect of preseason was enjoyable, but for players, it's a few things. It's getting your fitness up. Okay. Depending on whether it's a new coach, I was always playing for new coaches. Like it was crazy. So preseason was always a war. So
Mm,
for St. Louis guys are fighting for positions. So it's going to be an intense preseason for those guys. Okay, because they're competing for jobs. And to basically be have a good
yeah.
have a good opinion from the coach. Want the coaches
Right.
the opinion of them to be very good. So fitness number one. I think from a player standpoint, like I kind of break it up into three phases. Fitness number one, first third of preseason, you want to concentrate on that fitness. Second third, you want to start to see learning the system. I think starting to see the system kind of come together. Honestly, you want to see a loss in there at some point. You want to see a 2 or 3 nil loss. So you got things to kind of reflect on and go into the film room, and you rather that in preseason than you would the
Right.
first game of the season,
Mhm.
right? And then building relationships, also in that 2/3, like building relationships on the field, but then also off the field, getting to know your teammates that are coming in, getting to know your coaching staff, incredibly important. And then as preseason starts to end, you want to start to see those new concepts from the coach, really starting to develop on the field. Whether it's a new system, whether it's the relationships, you're starting to see those things come together. Now, you don't want it to be, you don't want to be at the very top of the pyramid. You're just firing on all cylinders. You want that, in the season, obviously, but
Yeah.
ending preseason, starting to see some of those mistakes that you see in the first 2 or 3 games be limited out, and really really excited for that first game, confident going into it, that you're feeling confident in the system, feeling confident in the coach, and feeling confident in the players next to you. But
Oh my god. I mean, by the way, folks, that was not scripted. That
no,
was
not scripted. That
perfect,
that is
man.
that is what you want, and you want preseason to be enjoyable. That's a huge important part from the club, the owners, all the way down to the head coach. That you want your players to enjoy preseason as much, because it is a grind.
Yeah.
Once the season starts, you're in a system. You're Tuesday, Wednesdays are going to be kind of hard. Thursdays you're going to taper off. Friday set pieces, and you're going to go through that the rest of the season. So preseason is intense, 2 a days,
Yep.
training hard every day. If you're playing a game, you're going to get that next day off, but it's intense. I mean, it's a grind. So if you can throw in good meals, you can throw in a night out for the guys to go out.
Yeah.
Like I said, that like the karaoke for the rookies, all that stuff is great. You really want, preseason to be as less stressful as possible, but it's always going to be stressful. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is preseason.
I feel you. I feel a healthy, stressful. What and you kind of glossed over it, AJ, because I think a lot of people kind of just picture like, okay, preseason, they show up, got to get fit and get going. What about the the preseason?
Ooh.
What was your regimen, AJ? I mean, like, are you showing up, to preseason pretty fit already, or having been on your own regiment and your own kind of fitness plan, or have you kind of just been winging it? Like, what does it look like between the last game of the season and preseason beginning to kind of get you ramped up and ready for preseason?
Yeah, for me, it was always I tried to just concentrate on my fitness and not so much playing. Now, if I had an opportunity to go out and play a little small sided with some guys that were back in town, I would do that. But for me, it was always just trying to stay fit and go in with a good base of fitness. So I would come back here and I would work. I used to go to a place called Athletic Republic, and I would train with Johnny Johnson, who still does training and trains a lot of young kids. I mean, he is the man. if you got young kids, nephews, cousins, guy's name's Johnny Johnson. He has his own gym. So that's who I would go to.
Okay.
But I think now in MLS, it's personal trainers. It's some guys obviously have homes. So if you're here in St. Louis and you got a home, guess what? You're probably going and working out at St. Louis after you go take your holiday, take your
Right.
vacation. You're going to come back and probably work at the facilities there or wherever your respective home
Yep.
is. You got a small group there that you're training. So most important thing I would say for 90% of the players that in their off season is just to come in with a good base of fitness.
Okay.
I don't think they're too worried about
Yeah.
if you're a rookie, and you want to get reps on the ball and whatnot. I think that's important. But I think coming in with a good base of fitness is number one priority for most guys in the MLS.
I feel you can't be fat guy rolling up. Doesn't
No,
matter
you
who you
can't.
are.
You can't, and listen, I was never the fittest. I'll be the first person to say that. So I always just wanted to make sure that I came in with a good base, right?
Yeah.
Because guys, you don't need to be coming in. Some guys are just naturally fit.
Right.
But if you can come in and just be able to, do your job and, you're not cramping up or pulling a muscle the first week and you
Right.
come in with a good base of fitness and you get your first 30 minutes, then you get your 45, then you get your 75. Guess what? You're going to be firing on all cylinders. So if the coaches do a good job, and I mean, they're way more advanced now than when I was in the league with their sports
Right.
science aspect. I mean, it's incredible, like the GPS monitors, the heart rate. I mean, they track everything. So, yeah, that's.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it, man.
yeah.
Couple last questions for you, AJ, on the preseason kind of mindset. And you mentioned kind of the young players and how that might be different for the veterans. I was going to ask you that exact question because you've been both, right? You've been the draft pick that wants to prove himself, and you've been, the 8, 9, 10-year veteran who's done this plenty of times before. How do you, get up in the morning and how do you approach, that mindset or your preseason when you're on different sides of that spectrum?
It's a good question. When you're in your early years, like when I was a rookie, it was pure excitement of a little bit of nervousness, obviously. That first year, you're going to be nervous. But then as the years go on, the one thing that I can say about my career was I think out of my 10 years, I had 9 different head coaches or 8 different head coaches. It was just constantly a new coach year after year. So for me, no matter whether I was a rookie or a veteran, I was having to come in and prove myself year after year, no matter what. So I guess it just kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah.
For St. Louis, right? All those guys have to come into that locker room, unless you're probably Berkey, okay, and Lewin, and Klaus, and probably Vasilev now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those 4 guys, your spots are safe, okay?
Yep.
But you can't be coming in and slacking off,
Right.
because you're going to lose the respect of everyone else around you. So that's what you don't want. But having a new coach come in, I mean, it's war. There's no guaranteed spot. So whether you're a rookie or you're 33 years old,
Right.
you're coming in and you're battling for that spot, and you need to bring the best version of yourself. Now, if you've played for a coach and you've been a starter for that coach for 5 years, preseason's probably, you're a Darlington Nagby, it's probably going to be a little more relaxed, right? So you can probably kick your feet up and relax because he just wants you ready for that first game of the season. So
what would you say, AJ, to this is my second last on preseason, and we got one more question from a listener here. My second last question around preseason is, if you could give me the phone battery percentage of how hard are you going in preseason? Let's just call it that maybe middle match, for us, that would have been Austin or New York City. How much are you leaving in the tank to make sure, one, that you're not pushing too fast, early on in preseason, and two, you want to leave a little bit there to bring to the field for the real, show. How do you put a cap on your own powers and abilities?
yeah, I think it just that really gets managed, I would say, by the minutes of the coaches.
Okay.
You want to have that gradual incline through preseason. If you're going into that first game and you overdo it and you get hurt, you pick up a knock, that's not what you want. Let's say preseason's 5 games, right? As you're finishing that third game in that 60 minutes, that 75 minutes, you want to feel like you can go 90 and that you're pushing. You're like, hey, coach, I actually want to go another 15. Whether he lets you or not, you probably shouldn't be, but you want to be hitting that stride from a battery standpoint. After that third game, I think you want to be around that 75, 80%. Okay. And then as you end that fifth game, you want to be, you want to be pushing 90%, 95%, feeling good, feeling fit, but not to that 100% yet, because the first two games, it's different. You're playing in front of
Yeah.
20,000, 25,000, so that adrenaline's going to kick in. You might think you're fit after the fifth game of preseason, but you're going to be huffing and puffing come 70 minutes
Right.
that first game. So,
Right.
you just want to continue to build that fitness through preseason. That's the most important thing.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. So I got two more things for you. One, a piece of
Yeah.
news, but two, our final question from a listener we
Okay.
have here. AJ, what are some of your favorite memories? This is coming from St. Louis City fan on X.
Okay.
What are some favorite memories playing at STLFC? Also, based on your experience playing with USL clubs, what are some things STLC could have done differently for more on-field success? Have fun with that one.
Oh man. Jeez. Man, I loved playing in front of the fans at St. Louis. I mean, it was just an incredible atmosphere. It was always 4,000 or 5,000. And the thing about STLFC, okay, is my 2 years here, we didn't make the playoffs, and the fans showed up every single game. And that was the incredible thing. And I think it was it was either 1 or 2 years before me where they didn't make playoffs, and we continued to sell out, and the Louligans showed up every single game. So, in terms of doing better, nothing from a fan perspective, from an organizational perspective. My gripe, and this just wasn't for STLFC, but for USL in general, there's so much turnover year to year. Okay. So for STL, okay, it was like, you would keep 8 guys, and then you'd bring
Yeah.
in a new 14 guys every
Yeah.
year, and this was with most teams I played on, where it was more than half the team every single year was brand new. And that takes a lot of time. That takes time to really gel and build those relationships. And if I were, sitting back and could go back and do it all over for STLFC, I would have tried to keep a 12 to 14 solid players
Yeah.
together and bring in, a 6 to 7 to help instead of completely
Overhaul.
turn.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why that happened is because we, had another coach come in. So we went from Dale to Preki. So obviously a new coach is going to come in and say, I don't want those guys.
Right.
We're bringing in my guys.
Yep.
And it's hard for success that way. So, that's why I think Phoenix did really well when I was there. Is we kept, from our first year to our second year, I think we kept 12, 13 guys, and that's unheard of in USL. You just don't see it.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And you'll be delighted to know you've mentioned Phoenix right now. I think you've mentioned a couple of these teams already, but most of the teams that you featured for in the USL, I'm looking at Charleston Battery, Phoenix, Indy. So the news today broke, and I'll break this to you if you haven't seen it, and that's USL has announced plans to sanction or bring a top-tier first division to the US soccer pyramid as a direct competitor to MLS by 2027. The plans, it's just a plan right now, it's just a vision, but they're almost going to, they're not almost, they will have their own pyramid, right? They're going to keep the championship. It sounds like they'll lift, it sounds like it'll be, it has to be a certain number of teams to become a tier 1 league. And I think it's between 12 and 14. So they'll meet that standard. I bet they elevate, what I've heard is they'll elevate probably 6 or 7 of those franchises that have such a strong foundation and following, like the teams I just mentioned. They're almost every team that you played for there. But this is their plan. They've wanted to do this. It sounds like going to maybe look at Pro Rel as well as part of their pyramid. I mean, obviously early days. We'll see if this actually gets there. It's a couple years out. It'll be a year after the World Cup is here in the States. But what do you think about that? Does that shock you, AJ, or does that excite you for what could be? What are your thoughts?
Ooh, it excites me for what could be. There's always been whispers, right? Everyone's like, we want to see that over here in the United States. Okay. So shout out to Jeremy Allenbaugh, okay, who was at STLFC for a long time and president of the USL now. Okay. What a guy. This for the USL, I mean, it needs to happen. If we're going to compete with the MLS, okay, which is already going to be extremely hard. Everyone knows that. Okay. But the USL has a great foundation. And the pro relegation, okay, the promotion relegation is the one thing that I think could 100% compete with the MLS. And the reason why I say that, now I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about the millions and millions of dollars. MLS is on that state is always
Right.
going to be bigger.
Mhm.
Okay. But the fan base, the attention, these cities that maybe, that aren't in the MLS. I mean,
Right.
to really get to experience that pro rel. If you've ever
Yep.
been to England, Germany, I mean, it is insane. It's nuts. It's
Mhm.
a different, if it's a different style. I mean, if you're in last place, you're packing out the stands because guess what? You need to win the last 3
Yeah.
games to stay up. You're going to
Yeah.
put clubs under pressure. They're going to have to put more money into their teams. Players are going to get paid more. They're going to want better stadiums, better facilities. They're going to want to attract better players. If they can pull it off, there's always been whispers. If the USL can pull this off and go to that, I think they said 12 teams in that Division One that they're calling, okay, and then start that pro rel, I think it would be special. And I think you would see
Yeah.
you'd see a lot of MLS fans following it because it's going
Mhm.
to be cool. I mean, when you watch the FA Cup and you see a
Yeah.
Liverpool down 1-0 to
Amazing.
a beer league team and in their little, in their little stadium. I
Right.
mean, it's fun to watch. It's good for the culture. So,
I agree.
I think if it can happen, there's only good things that can come from it. So, I'm
Good.
really hoping
I
for it,
love it.
Jake. I'm really hoping
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's late breaking today was when they just kind of brought forth that plan and announced it. But yeah, they said they want to launch their own Division One men's professional league in the 27-28 season and have, two now different high level soccer leagues here in the US. Worst case, it doesn't happen, obviously, but there's other flavors like in between the best case. And I feel like, what if they just push MLS and maybe eventually there's some sort of merger and maybe MLS adapts some of the best practices or some of the things that were such a big hit there. I also am happy for those markets like Indianapolis, like Charleston, Phoenix, even. These are all markets I feel like that have been tempted maybe with MLS expansion teams before. And we know they have big fan bases. We know they have some good soccer specific grounds and history, obviously. So to see those markets get a professional team at a top tier when play and every result really, really means something, right? When it comes down
Yeah.
to it, I would absolutely tune in, even if we don't have a St. Louis team.
Yeah, it's hard to predict the future. I think you're spot on, but in 10, 15 years, right? Say there's 10 more Louisville stadiums
Yep.
that hold 14,000, 15,000 that are dynamite locations, right? In great cities with great fan bases. You never know. That's the
Mhm.
one thing that continues the USL championship. And I think they know this needs to continue to get better. Louisville's setting the standard. They really are. Their stadium's beautiful and the training facility is beautiful. So as more USL championships teams follow that, they bring on owners that want to invest in that. You could see something like that. I don't know from a MLS standpoint, kind of their vision on how that would happen, or the USL champion, the USL's vision on how a merger would happen, or who obviously the MLS would probably have to,
Right.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I think the one thing that would help that category would be stadiums and facilities and
for sure.
promotion relegation. And I
Yep.
think every fan on here, if you ask 100 fans, hey, do you want to see pro rel in the United States to some aspect? 99 of them are going to
Yeah.
say yes. So
It's basically everyone but the owners. And I get that too.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you didn't buy that. That's not
And
what you were buying.
exactly, Jake. Tell them why.
Yeah.
Give that perspective
Right.
why. The owners might say they want to, but deep down inside, they're probably nervous.
Yeah, I mean, you bought your club and your expansion fee for us at a price, and part of the package was you're going to have the rights, the same broadcast rights as all the
Yeah,
fellow clubs, and you'll have MLS operates in that single entity as well, and this USL would not. All those clubs would be separately run businesses almost. So when you buy in as an MLS owner, you have that kind of comfort blanket of security, knowing that that will never happen to you. Teams that get relegated in the top 5 European leagues I can at least speak to. I mean, it's devastating for some. Some they never come back, and
yep,
some it might take some celebrity owners to bring you back to the promised land. Look at Wrexham. I mean,
right.
it's not easy to go up and down those ladders, and it's financially devastating for some owners. You might lose a lot of money, but when you make that jump up, it's a windfall like you've never seen before as well. So there's the high highs and the low lows.
Yep, spot on, spot on. It'd be really hard for it'd be a huge risk financially for MLS ownerships to do that. USL Championship. The best thing about it, I think, is for the players. I think the
Yeah.
players and the fans, because it forces the owners to put more money into the team. I'm looking at it from a USL standpoint, okay, where it forces the owners to invest more in the club and in the fans, or excuse me, in the players.
For sure.
And in the fans. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. So better facilities, better players, everything. So, I would love to see that from a fan's perspective now, to see Pro Rel, test the waters here in the United States in
Who
a couple years.
knows? Could be here soon.
Make it happen, Jeremy. Make it happen. We're behind you. We want to see it.
Well, I'm excited to hear more about this, and we'll absolutely have you back to talk about this and plenty of other topics here, AJ. But for the first of our, tapping into our experts, I think this has been a fun one. Hopefully you all have learned some additional insights from someone that's lived and walked in those boots before in preseason. And AJ, was fun talking to these games. I'm looking forward to doing this more in the season.
Thank you so much for having me on. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I had an absolute blast. So thank you for having me on. Anytime you want me on, I'll happily come on and share an opinion or two.
Looking forward to it, man. We'll have you back here soon. In the meantime, hopefully we'll see you at Energizer Park now as the team gets kicked off here. Under 10 days now. It's nuts. We'll have a beer at the pitch or something and catch up. But we'll see you all here for the podcast listeners here soon. And AJ, I'm going to kick you from the studio and I'm going to finish this out here. But have a good rest of your night, sir.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
See you, man. All right. I will bring us home, everyone that hasn't dropped yet because AJ dropped. I do want to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor for this year, Hoffman Brothers. Obviously, you all know and hopefully feel near and dear to our presenting sponsor, Hoffman Brothers, at this point. And if you didn't already, you got to feel it now. I'm going to tell you about something special they're doing. So they're partnered with Stray Rescue. Hopefully a lot of you all know who Stray Rescue is. If you don't, it's in the name. Type it in on Google if you want to learn more about it. But during February and March, we're in the middle of February. And so for another, 45 days or so, they're giving a portion of all sales in these 2 months to Stray Rescue of St. Louis when you purchase Hoffman Brothers services. It's the time to do it. It's the winter, and soon enough, it'll be the one day of spring that we get. And then it'll be the blazing hot of summer. If there's any more incentive you needed than your home breaking down potentially right in front of your eyes, do it for the Strays. I mean, what a cool partnership to have an organization that is so St. Louis, based and historically rooted in St. Louis, like Hoffman Brothers, and to have an organization like Stray Rescue, link up and make a difference in this community. So if you didn't have enough incentive already to fix your home or to do anything underneath your roof, give Hoffman Brothers a call at 314-664-3011 or visit them online at hoffmanbros.com. And remember, a portion of all your sales, all of their sales, all of your, money that you give to them for any of those services you might acquire during that time will, a portion at least, go to Stray Rescue. Check out their Instagram, their X and social media. They're posting so much dog content. It warms my heart. So shout out to Hoffman Brothers. I'm going to kind of round us out here with a couple small, final topics for you all as we transition into the show here. But something that's mentioned a lot, we didn't see as much from him towards the end of preseason, was Mykhi Joyner. And we talked about him on, I think, the last episode. But Matt Doyle, who's obviously a great writer for MLS, went team by team and picked a player from each that could be poised to break out this season. The choice for City, Mykhi Joyner. We saw him last year, sparingly. A lot of it, I think, due to our injury crisis. But in MLS Next Pro last year for City 2, kid lit it up. I mean, 16 goals, 4 assists in just over 1,800 minutes. He is a threat, and he really came into his own towards, I'd say, the half to back half of last season for City 2. Underneath a new coach now, we've seen him feature in a couple different roles in the preseason that we have seen. I don't think there'll be pressure for him to come in and cement a spot because we have more depth now. But would I be shocked to see him get more minutes this year than he did last year? No. And would I be shocked if he came in next year and was a first off the bench or challenging for some starting minutes? Absolutely not, especially depending on how the Klaus situation runs out. So I agree with Matt Doyle's, explanation and sort of synopsis that this could be our next breakout player. And he's only 18. He's got so much room to grow. And I think he'll be a big part of our team, especially probably looking more at next year. But who knows? This season, breakouts are breakouts for a reason. You don't expect them. They just happen. So maybe he could be one to really see some meaningful minutes. We're not in it this year, but I wanted to talk briefly about the Leagues Cup format for 2025. Totally different. Obviously, we're not in it. It's going to be a smaller tournament this year with 2 rounds. They're going to call the first round phase 1 and the second the knockout rounds. And how they look different are that phase 1 is going to be 3 consecutive match dates per club that'll be played, between July 29th and August 7th. So instead of that, month-long break that we took for MLS last year and played all these games and did the whole tournament in that time span and then kicked MLS right back off after that, they're going to do all of phase 1 in almost about a 10-day span. And then they're going to play all 54 of those phase 1 games in that span, and they'll all be MLS versus Liga MX. No MLS on MLS or Liga MX on Liga MX. It'll be only cross-league games. In the knockouts, what they're going to do is almost create 2 separate tables. One table of the top MLS sides based on, points gathered and performance, and another table, the same thing, but for Liga MX. And they'll take the top 4 MLS teams, the top 4 Liga MX teams, and pin them up against each other for the knockouts, which begin in the quarterfinals. And those are all guaranteed to be MLS versus Liga MX. So from phase 1 through the quarterfinals, you're guaranteed to have MLS versus Liga MX, which I think a lot of it is the purpose of this tournament to start with. I'm excited for it. We don't have as much of the onus on it this year in terms of, wanting to combat, this tournament because of what's happening to US Open Cup. Obviously we still don't like the direction US Open Cup has taken. We're glad to be in it this year and we want to prioritize this competition, but I'll be keeping an eye on this. I think it's an interesting format. And to pit these 2 leagues against each other and really see who stacks up and who comes out on top, I'm excited for it. So you can definitely catch me tuning into some of these games. It'll be interesting. The final topic I wanted to round out on was cash for players. We talked about this new mechanism or new sort of market that's been created in MLS recently. Guys, I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs of every MLS financial mechanism with GAM and TAM and DPs and U22s. I know enough to be dangerous, but this one feels simple. And cash for players is, again, like an internal market where owners and clubs can trade just money, like just green money for players. And it just, really, I feel like went into effect recently, the last couple of weeks, but we've seen it be used for some blockbuster deals already. And it's actually letting teams be able to make deals they never could have imagined. And I just picked 2 examples out from an article that I was able to find. Jack McGlenn is a rising star. He was on Philadelphia. He has since transferred to Houston. He's a U.S. international, incredible left foot, incredible player. I thought he might make the jump to Europe, but everything kind of changed for him when MLS implemented this new cash for players trade mechanism. And all of a sudden, Phillies, picking up the phone, dialing up teams saying, does anyone have interest in this guy? And Houston's like, we could have never even actioned this because they had so much of their allocation money, their GAM and TAM, tied up when they were trying to be really competitive during their years with Hector Herrera, who has since left the club. So they don't have the mechanisms, pre-cash for players, market to acquire a player like Jack McGlenn. But this happens and they fork over the cash. They add Jack McGlenn for $2.1 million plus add-ons of about 1.3 and a 50% sell-on clause if he is to be sold on. Without this rule, literally, this is what their sporting director said, I don't think this probably happens. They really see a lot in Jack McGlenn. They were able to use this new mechanism to trigger that and get McGlenn onto the team. In another similar type vein, Dejan Joveljic, now an MLS Cup winner with LA Galaxy, has moved to our rivals out in Kansas. This was technically the first ever use of the cash for players mechanism. And he was a huge player for LA Galaxy last year. Really had a good breakout season, aged out of his U22 classification, technically. And they're wanting to get some cash for him and make some new acquisitions. He was linked with a couple other teams abroad, like Mexican Giants Tigres, but it was Sporting that finally was able to fork up the money needed for him, forking over $4 million to the Galaxy for a 3-year deal and a DP status for Joveljic. Again, this is what their sporting director had to say. There's probably a pretty good percentage chance that without this mechanism, the MLS loses Dejan. Not just Sporting, but MLS as a whole. And this is one of your budding big strikers. They said, certainly we feel like it benefited us, and that's why we did the deal. But there's also, I believe, a benefit to MLS in terms of being able to retain and keep players in the league that have had success. Selfishly for Sporting, great player. I'm dreading having to run up against him and see how he features against us. I do have confidence that we will come out on top, but he'll be a good player to play against. But I also feel good about this too, because it's been high profile D's. Like like Lucho Acosta has moved on the same thing, and so has Evander from Portland to Cincinnati, where Lucho left and went to Dallas. So there's been so many back and forth swaps, and we'll talk about those here soon. Some of those big deals of the summer, or I guess our winter window. But allowing and incentivizing or just making it possible for MLS to retain top talent as well and use this new mechanism to transfer players to owners and clubs that have the money to acquire them, even if they don't have the allocation money to acquire them. I love it. I think it's a step forward. It's good for us to be able to grow and hold on to some talent at times when you want to, and this is an opportunity to do so. So that's the last topic I wanted to cover here, but the last of the last, never the last in our hearts, is Underdog. So for those of you that missed it or the last couple episodes, we've been talking about Underdog. We went to their Super Bowl, the big game party, and it was a blast. They really care about Missouri. I learned and really felt that in the room with all of these folks from Underdog. And, they see Missouri as a place that can really, adapt and love the fantasy games that they have. So people probably questioning right now, Underdog, doesn't that kind of sound like one of the other sports sites that I'm used to seeing? It's not. It's a fantasy, gaming site, and it's one of the simplest products and things to use. It's an app on your phone, and it's just about players and people that you love to watch in sports and across all sports. And all you're literally doing is looking at some of their projections, whether that's about points or shots on target or saves, or they're going to have tons of MLS content coming up. Trust me, and you all will be seeing those in the app, maybe with a couple of our faces, wink, wink. And you pick higher or lower. Do I think Joao Klaus will score higher than a half goal against Sporting KC? Absolutely. I might tease that up to 1.5 and say higher than 1.5 goals. So I love this app and Underdog as a whole. I think they're doing a lot in terms of making it easy for me to participate and have fun and use my skills, at least my projections and my brain, put it to work for something, right? And Underdog's the place to do that. So if you haven't played on Underdog yet, you got to get on there and claim your free pick. You get one as a new customer. And when you do so, make sure you're using our promo code BALLWATCHING, all one word. And when you sign up, you get that new pick, you get that free pick. You also can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit as well. So download the app today and turn every moment into a W with Underdog. Thank you all for tuning in today. Been a blast of a show. So much fun to have AJ on and just to kind of pick his brain for someone that's actually walked in those shoes. And, it's not us speculating. It's a guy that's been there, done that. So it was a blast having AJ on. If you liked listening to AJ, definitely let us know. We'll have him on more often. I'm sure he would love to hear your all's feedback as well. And you'll be hearing from him throughout the season. So we'll be calling on all of our panel at some point here, but this was the first of, I'm sure, many, many more to come. So hopefully you all enjoyed. Let us know in the comments. Throw us a like on YouTube if you like the show. Throw us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify, Amazon, wherever you're catching us, and show us some love. We love bringing this content to you all, and we are T-minus 9 days away from the kickoff team. Cannot wait. Kit reveal coming here soon. You'll be seeing some content from us on that. Should be a blast. Can't wait to see what we'll be donning at Energizer Park this season. But so much more to come. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll chat next week. All for City.